Generational betrayal, HUD reveals that the Biden administration gave illegal aliens FHA-backed mortgages. Yeah, we've got Americans who aren't getting home loans because the criminal illegals are. Make that make sense. Let's get into it. Here we go. All right, we've got the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. He's going to give us a quick little rundown on what happened and what's not happening moving forward.
You know, during the Biden administration, there were over 12 million illegal aliens that came over the border, straining our housing supply and making the costs go up. And so we worked with Secretary Noem at DHS, as you alluded to make sure that only American citizens are living in HUD-funded housing. We also took away FHA-backed mortgages from illegal aliens during the Biden administration. They turned a blind eye. But we're going to keep the law to make sure that these mortgages, which are backed by the taxpayer, go only to the American people. And lastly, we are mandating that every public housing authority give us a comprehensive account who's living in every unit in taxpayer HUD-funded housing.
Wow.
Good.
Actually, Dave, was another impact of that wide open border.
You know what I'm surprised didn't happen? Surprised they didn't give out VA loans to some criminal illegal aliens. Could you imagine? Are you a veteran? No. Are you a U.S. citizen? No. Hey, how would you like a VA loan? How would you like a VA loan? Insanity, right? Insanity. Now, what we're working with here is we're working with policy where these are DACA recipients, right? That are getting FHA loans. That's my understanding. And so we didn't prevent them from getting an FHA loan under the Biden administration. So the Trump administration has to come right out and say, yeah, no go. These are for U.S. citizens only, because apparently there was some kind of, well, maybe they're just handing out loans left and right. They're just handing out American citizen taxpayers' money left and right. I mean, just an absolute abuse. Let's read the article. HUD Secretary Scott Turner told Fox Business on Friday that illegal aliens received federally backed mortgages during the Biden-Harris regime years. Turner characterized this as a significant policy failure by the previous administration and evidence of what he called misplaced priorities that favored illegals over American homebuyers. Now, one of the interesting things that I always have in the back of my head, when you send, he called it 12 million. When you send, I think it's closer to 20 million into the United States, you send 20 million people. They all got to live somewhere, right? That was one of the major reasons you've just got all this crazy you've already got a lack of supply of housing. Now you need a place for all these folks to go. Where are they going to go? Well, they're going to go to entry-level housing. They're going to go to subsidized housing. They're going to go to FHA-funded. FHA is insured and VA is guaranteed. I believe that's the distinguishing. So with an FHA loan, you get in with 3.5% down, and then you've got a mortgage premium until you can prove that you've got, I think it's 20% equity in the property. So you get reappraised a few years down the road after you buy it and get rid of the private mortgage insurance, the PMI. But on a VA loan, it is guaranteed. Percentage of that loan is guaranteed. I think the first 25%, so that money can be recouped in case the veteran borrower defaults. But that's why you can go zero down on VA, and you go 3.5% down on FHA. They're both meant to get people in, and you have to be a veteran to get the VA loan. That's why I'm kind of jokingly saying I'm shocked that Biden didn't hand out VA loans to the criminal illegals as well. You know, during the Biden administration, there were over 12 million illegal aliens. We heard about that, making the costs go up, straining our housing supply. I don't think enough attention's been put on that, hey, where'd all these folks go? They went to community housing. They went to permanent supportive housing. They went to whatever. Who's paying for all that? Oh, we are. Wasn't that great when Let's Go Brandon Johnson is like, we are a... That guy is such an idiot. We are a sanctuary city, and we welcome them coming to Chicago. And then he got to a point where he was like, wow, that's expensive. We're spending a lot of money. Now, let's go. Brandon Johnson's got a $1.1 billion budget deficit, and he's not quite sure what to do. He continued, this is the HUD secretary. And so we worked with Secretary Noem at DHS, Department of Homeland Security, as you alluded to make sure that only American citizens are living in HUD-founded housing. I mean, on what planet should we have to have a program where it's only American citizens are in housing and urban development housing? You know what I mean? How do we get here? How do we get to this point where there's just a bunch of Looney Tunes running around doing whatever? I mean, we're loan officers. You guys were clearly out there. Well, apparently we're going to run this through underwriting. And even though you're not a citizen, and even though we can't really ask if you're a citizen or not, if you have work authorization and you have consistent pay stubs, we're going to run it through underwriting and see it came back. Looks like you're good. Let's close. And this is for somebody that could be deported, right? This is for somebody who could be deported. They are not citizens of the U.S. We also took away FHA-backed mortgages from illegal aliens. So when he came right out and said it, during the Biden administration, they turned a blind eye. We're going to be keep the law to make sure that these mortgages, which are backed by the taxpayer, go only to the American people, as they should. Right? This handing out to everybody else makes zero sense. You can't take care of the entire world. You can't even take care of about 1 million people come into the United States legally and actually become U.S. citizens, something like that, 1 million a year. I mean, how many billion people are there in the world, and how many of those 9-10 billion live below the poverty line, something like that? I mean, this whole we're helping. It doesn't fly. Got to take care of home first, and then you go out and hey, you need some help. Lastly, we're mandating every public housing authority give us a comprehensive account of who's living in every unit and every taxpayer-funded HUD property. Remember when we were trying to figure out who's living in the apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado, and everybody was like, "Oh, yeah, it's just some immigrants," and everybody that's conservative is like, "Wait a minute. You've got gangs living there. This isn't just normal folks. You've got 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧𝗛. Here's the footage. See?" And nobody wanted to. Oh, good Lord! You got 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧𝗛 in Aurora, Colorado. Well, it's only limited to 3 buildings, and you're like, yeah, okay, all right. 𝗥𝗘𝗔𝗦𝗢𝗥. Holy smokes, generational betrayal has occurred. HUD Secretary Scott Turner confirmed a Democrat gave government-backed mortgages to illegal aliens, harming American citizens. That just shouldn't be happening. It just shouldn't be happening. I mean, it's hard enough to get an effing loan. We've got a real affordability crisis in the United States. I don't care if you're going to affordable locations or not, but here in Seattle, we've got a massive problem where our home prices have gone to here. And you know what? Even with tech bros in there, our wages are here. You got a big gap. And with mortgage rates, it makes those pricings just a little bit more because you don't have that cheap money we did during the pandemic. Everybody got so used to that. Just, mortgage rate at 3%. That's basically free money. Relative to 9, 10, 11, 12%, it's free money. It's free money. In March, Turner's team at HUD began terminating Biden-era policy that allowed illegals to receive taxpayer-backed FHA mortgages. Very simple terms, this means taxpayers are no longer subsidizing government-insured home loans for illegals. Good. That's how it should be. It's kind of like in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott and his attorney general just making sure that no communities that are exclusive only to Muslims and that operate on, Muslim law are able to basically proliferate. He's like, no go. You're violating, all kinds of housing standards. That's a hard no go. We're not accepting that in our community. Boom, done. And then Abbott also indicated one of their nonprofit organizations, CARE, is a terrorist organization. You're like, oh, okay. All right. I see where you're heading with this, and I don't object. Biden's policy amounted to a generational betrayal, driven out of control climate crisis spending and an invasion of illegals that strained an already tight housing market. Yeah, we've had an undersupply of housing for decades, and it got way worse after the Great Recession, and it has not gotten better. And in areas of the United States where you have shrunk the supply of housing, whether through cost, whether through massive permitting, whether through constricting the supply of land, typically Democrat-run cities, that has happened. You know, those prices they're either holding steady right now or rents are going up, right? Because you just don't have enough housing. Commercial rents dropping. Commercial rents, Seattle's commercial rents are dropping at a greater rate than anywhere in the United States. Because look what you've got incoming for a mayor. You've got a socialist for a mayor who wants big business to pay their share. Then you've got state representatives here in Washington State, Sean Scott, that want to put a massive payroll tax because, you know, progressive revenue, just like let's go Brandon Johnson, that's really going to get things going. No business wants to go into an environment where they're just automatically, boop, you're going to have a big payroll tax. They just don't. And we're reading from Tyler Durden of ZeroHedge. I love this stuff. It's so great. Let this sink in, Tyler Durden goes on to say, illegals were able to access government-backed mortgages and receive generous taxpayer-funded benefits from housing assistance to food and health care, while citizens endured the highest inflation in a generation. They're getting everything. We're paying for it, subsidizing it with our taxpayer dollars. You enjoy that? You like that? You like that? You want another one? No, nobody likes that. But, yeah, it's who you vote for, right? It's who you vote for. This revelation is likely to anger millions of young Americans who were pushed aside by Democrats and left behind as housing affordability collapsed and government resources were diverted to those here illegally. You know, you've got a whole bunch of different factors going on. But the bottom line is that housing has not come down. And you do not have the ability to bring enough supply to the market to actually have a downward impact on that type of environment. Now, what you are seeing is in Texas and in Florida, you are seeing some housing pricing coming down because they have enough supply on the market that when things slow down, competing sellers, whether it's a builder, whether it's an existing homeowner that's got their home on the market, in order for them to sell, they got to bring that down to that equilibrium price where things sell. That is happening. That's happening, but because they have so much supply, and that's why their housing is so much cheaper in environments like Florida, like Texas, Oklahoma that I'm always babbling about, the Carolinas, Arizona, and a lot of those housing has gone up significantly. Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas. Some of the increases there are just like, wow, that's crazy, especially considering how much they have built because they've got populations coming in. Theirs is built on populations. West Coast, Best Coast, Chicago, New York City is based on constriction of supply. Simple as that. It also comes alongside fraud cases of staggering size, including the Minneapolis scandal currently unfolding, which the Somali community has been accused of stealing billions from taxpayers. Yeah, that happened, right? I mean, that happened. I should say that is happening. That is some wild stuff going on there. I mean, how much money under Tim Walz, Tampon Tim? I mean, that guy should be tossed from office. If that went on and he knew about that going on, he should be tossed. Trump admin bars illegal immigrants. We've got the New York Post. I don't think there was anything crazy new in there. This is the one thing I wanted to bring up from this article. In 2021, Biden administration ordered FHA mortgage lenders to allow non-permanent residents enrolled in the DACA Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program access to government-backed home loans. So this is the actual angle that they used. They weren't handing out FHA-insured loans to just willy-nilly any criminal illegal, but ones that were in they're adults, deferred action for childhood arrivals, which, so your parents came here and they gave birth to you and now automatically you're a shoo-in for all this stuff. I'm kind of no-go. I'm kind of no-go on that. Let me know if you're a no-go, if you're like, Sean, I think DACA is fine and all that stuff is good. HUD's new policy will block DACA recipients, undocumented migrants brought to the U.S. as children, and those with pending asylum claims from access to FHA loans. When are we going to get over this whole notion of, oh my gosh, somebody is being deported? I see news stories on this all the time, and it just reminds me how far left mainstream media has gone. We had in Redmond. I point this way because that's Redmond's over there. Yeah, Redmond's over there. We had some actress that got questioned by Homeland Security or by ICE. And it was a news story. Oh, somebody questioned or detained. Well, maybe she didn't have her citizenship in order. Maybe there was something associated with somebody she knew that was funny, that was a little bit wonky. But, and then you see stories like 50% of those who have been deported did not have a criminal history. And I'm like, yeah, but they're here illegally and they came across the border and they were ready to go. They were ready to be deported. And that's what ICE did. This whole thing of all these governments. Oh, here's how you avoid. You see leadership. You see these mayors and these governors basically coming out and saying, here's how you avoid ICE. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that? If they're tossing somebody that shouldn't be here, that's called cleanup. Clean up on aisle 5, right? HUD is prioritizing Americans. Change in policy comes the same week HUD announced it would work with DHS, bar illegal immigrants from public housing. How's that going to go? I mean, the whole thing. The whole thing is just crazy, right? HUD cited data from the Center for Immigration Studies showing that about 59% of illegal migrant households benefit from at least one government welfare program, accounting for roughly $42 billion in costs. $42 billion. Insane. That is absolutely insane. The agency said there are at least 9 million residents of public and subsidized housing without proper information sharing to determine eligibility status. That's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's an 8-word sentence that means illegal, right? Illegal. But hey, who's counting? Minnesota officials saw signs of massive fraud even before COVID hit. If that is true, if this is true, Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, he's got to go. He's got to go. I know Tampon Tim, I think he came into the state of Washington. I don't really know what he was doing, but our governor was like, don't say about the Somalia problem. Just don't say anything. Just mum's the word. Hey, Tim, how we doing? What's going on? Oh, never mind. Don't answer that question. Yeah, so you had a little, that news story. Oof. July 2019, Minnesota state officials spotted early signs of fraud that would eventually siphon away more than $1 billion in tax money. And the fact that a bunch of this money ends up with terrorist Al-Shabaab? Are you kidding me? I mean, you literally can't make this kind of buffoonery up. Because there was like 1,000 officials that basically said, hey, we tried to say something in Minnesota. We tried to tell, folks at top levels of government this is going on. And $1 billion? How is that not tracked in some way, shape, or form? When you've got an increase of 3,000% of autism clinics or whatever it was, the whole thing is just absolutely insane. It's insane. And it's all planned. This was all organized fraud. organized fraud. No one in the state of Minnesota, no one in the Department of Education has taken any responsibility for this fraud that they allowed to go through. I mean, it's nutty. It's nutty that this is going on. And this is happening because you've got a Democrat-led state, you got a Democrat-led city that are just kind of going haywire. Recent days, President Trump has claimed Somali migrants ripped off Minnesota and has referred to the state as a hellhole. And he also referred to Tampon Tim as retarded. And then Tampon Tim got worked up because people were, well, let's play that clip. That's a great clip. Let's play that clip.
You mentioned Tim Walz, and you called him what many Americans do find an offensive word, retarded. Do you stand by that claim of calling Tim Walz retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with him. Absolutely, sure. I'd never seen this before. People driving by my house and using the R word in front of people. This is shameful.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has claimed that the harassment outside his home has escalated into what he calls a nonstop barrage of drive-bys. Not bullets, but slurs. Specifically, the R word shouted from passing cars ever since President Donald Trump used it to insult him publicly. He called the behavior dangerous, shameful, and openly encouraged by political rhetoric.
And I'll tell you what, in my time on this, I'd never seen this before. People driving by my house and using the R word in front of people. This is shameful.
Trump was offered a chance last week to walk back the remark. Instead, he doubled down.
For that, in that same post, you mentioned Tim Walz, and you called him what many Americans do find an offensive word, retarded. Do you stand by that claim of calling Tim Walz retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with him. Absolutely.
You don't think that?
You have a problem with it? You know what? I think there's something wrong with him. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into a state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. We give billions of dollars to Somalia. It's not even a country because it doesn't function like a country. It's got a name, but it doesn't function like a country.
100%.
There's something wrong with Walz.
Governor Walz said,
Oh, that's so good. That is just, I mean, you can't make that stuff up, right? And, you know, Tim Walz is all after Republicans, we have a couple of assassination attempts on Trump. You've got Charlie Kirk got murdered. You've got conservative newscasters. You've got conservative YouTubers being assaulted. You've got people being called Nazis. You got people just absolutely being, you got Christian groups in parks reading from the Bible and praising God and Jesus and being called right-wing extremists and Nazis. And then you got Tim Walz. They're calling me retarded. They called me the R word. Guy has zero balls. He has zero balls. He's not a man. And Democratic Party wanted to put him in place so that he could talk to the football guys. Is he really your guy? If you watch football, I don't watch a lot of football. I just don't care. Seahawks have disappointed me over so many times over the years. I'm like, nope. And they took away the Sonics. So, I'm not doing that. Tim Walz, is he your guy that you got? No, he's a poor excuse for a man. That's what he is. Tampon Tim. All right. HUD. No longer giving out those FHA loans. That's the way it should be. Those loans should, because they are taxpayer-backed, should be for legal residents of the United States. Period. Full stop. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe, hit the notification bell, share with friends and family, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again. Bye for now.